ended up doing Machu Picchu twice. Once I hiked the 4-day Salkantay and I took the train. So in today's video, I'm gonna walk you through all the ways I know of to get to Machu Picchu and give you some of my feedback on each. Okay, so here's how we're gonna do this. I've got an overhead shot right here looking at this map. I'm gonna break down each way that you can get to Machu Picchu and talk about them specifically. So this will be a longer video. There will be timestamps to each one. So if you know exactly how you wanna go to Machu Picchu and you just wanna learn about that in specific, then go down and scrub through and find that one. But I'm not gonna skip anything because traveling to Machu Picchu may be a once in a lifetime thing and it might shift your perspective on what you're doing with your life. So grab your smoothie, or your water, or both if you're like me, and let's get into it. First things first, there are 4 main ways that you can get to Machu Picchu. You can do the 4 to 6 day hike, either the Salkantay or Inca or some other one that I'm not aware of, but those are the 2 most popular. You can take the train up and then hike to Machu Picchu. You can take the train up and then bus to Machu Picchu, or you can take what's called a Collectivo and then hike the last bit to Machu Picchu. I know it's confusing, stay with me, I'll break all 4 of them down. The first one we're going to talk about is the several day hike. It's probably the most intensive to plan and the most time consuming. Like I said, there are 2 main hikes, the Salkantay and the Inca. The one I'm going to go over is the Salkantay because that's the one I personally did and it's the cheapest option and typically it's the least populated option. So what you're going to do is start down here in Cusco. Now for all of these, you're going to end up starting down here in Cusco. Now how you get to Cusco is up to you. If you fly into Lima, you can fly over to Cusco. You can take a bus through the Andes Mountains to Cusco, which is how I originally got there, and it's an experience, I'll say that. I'm not saying you'll end up like this, but the plane ride is looking pretty cushy right now. Either way, you get to Cusco. This is the main hub where you'll go first. If you're going to do Salkantay, what you're gonna end up doing is taking a Collectivo, which is like public transit down in Peru, especially outside of the city. And they're just vans or buses. It's hard to explain if you haven't been on one. They take you from different areas, from different cities or pueblas to the surrounding towns. There's a set path, but there's not always a set space for you to stop. I shouldn't say it like that. There's not a set space for you to stop. You just have to tell them when you want off. So you'll take a Collectivo from Cusco all the way up here to Moyepata, where this blue thing is. These blue things are the saved locations on my Google Maps, which I'll talk about later in this video. Now, before we really get to the hike, we have 2 of these rides. I love the ingenuity of other countries because they don't have big buses that take you everywhere, but they just have vans that they put together that they call Collectivos. You hop in and it's way cheaper than any taxi, and it takes you basically all over the mountains. So apparently we're gonna get into another small car instead of taking the Collectivo the whole way because it's a little bit cheaper and faster. But you take the Collectivo all the way out here. Then what you're gonna do is get on another taxi and take the taxi to Soraypampa because Collectivos don't actually go up here. This is a pretty rough road. Now, if you want to do the whole Salkantay, you'll actually start hiking here from Moyepata and hike up to Soraypampa. We didn't. We took the taxi. It's mostly just dirt road, and I would recommend that if you're like, I want to do the whole thing, then hike this portion of it. But either way, get up to Soraypampa. This is where you're gonna stay for the first night because Lake Umantay, it's kind of hard to see, but it's like right here. So when you get up here, there are places to stay. If you watch some of my other videos, you'll see what they look like. They're little huts. They're really cool. You could do this whole hike with just like a day pack. But you'll get up here, you'll drop your stuff off, and then hike up to Lake Umantay, which is gorgeous. One thing that I like about this hike in specific is that you get to do this. This is a big thing on people's bucket list when they come to Cusco. And if you hike Salkantay, you do them both in the same trip. So hike up to Lake Umantay. There are donkeys and horses that you can ride if you need because the elevation is really high. I don't know how high you are at this point, but it's well over 10,000 feet. And you're hiking at a pretty steep elevation. So hike up to Umantay, hang out for the day, do your thing, then come back down. You'll have dinner in Soraypampa and then stay there for the night. That's night 1. The second day is rough. This first bit is all uphill until you get to the mountain, Mount Salkantay, which is immaculate. It's 20,000 plus feet. You're at the base of it. You get there by lunchtime. You watch it and think about hiking it, but realize how much higher that is than you at that point, because I think you're like 14,000 feet and that mountain peaks at like 20,100 feet or something crazy like that. So you just enjoy it from the base of it. You take your photos, do your thing, and then the majority of the hike from that point forward is downhill. So you've done the toughest part of the hike so far. Then you hike down for the day, hike down to Colcapampa. You'll be here for another night. There are a bunch of, not a bunch, I shouldn't say a bunch, you're pretty remote still, but there are several different locations where you can stay or set up a tent. Put yourself up for the second night here in Colcapampa. Each of these places where you're gonna stay the night, they have food, they have electricity, and that's why I say you can really do this with a day pack. The only meal that you will need to pack, and you can pack on the first night, is that lunch when you're at the base of Salkantay. You'll want something to eat there. So what I would recommend is going to this first spot in Sorai and asking them for an extra meal and just paying them for it, pop it in your bag, and then hike the rest of the way up to Mount Salkantay. Anyways, you'll get down. Second night, you stay at Colcapampa. The third day, you're gonna wake up. You're gonna hike down. This is through, if I remember right, like the coffee fields. You actually go through several different climates throughout this entire hike. But you'll hike down here. You'll hike through the coffee regions. You'll get to Santa Teresa, which is the biggest town that you've seen in a couple days. Colcapampa is very small. Sorai is very small, but Santa Teresa is a little bit bigger. There's like coffee shops and places to eat and like a central area, like a central part of the city. You'll stay here for one night, which is in more of like a hostel type of place, hostel hotel vibe more than camping. Like Colcapampa and Sorai is more, if you get in a space, it's not camping, but it's pretty remote, or you'll be pitching a tent, one of the two. Third night, you're in Santa Teresa. You stay the night there. You hike down to Aguascalientes. Now, Aguascalientes is the city at the base of Machu Picchu. Just like Cusco, if you haven't been to Peru or you're planning this from abroad, Cusco is the main like hub region. This is a big city. The city's at 11,000 feet in altitude, but there are 500,000 people who live here. So it's a good sized place. This is where you'll fly in. This will be your main hub. Then you'll hike up, do these small towns, go to Santa Teresa, and then Aguascalientes is the small touristed town at the base of Machu Picchu. What I recommend you do if you've hiked this is go to Aguascalientes, enjoy your day. That hike isn't too bad. You'll have plenty of time in Aguascalientes. Get a good dinner. There's a lot more around than the last few days. Spend some time there, enjoy it. Go to the market. I recommend going to the market on the second floor. They have a lot of good breakfast spots and like juice bars that are cheap and more local.
Look at the size of these papaya. Look at how big that is.
Whereas most of the restaurants here are pretty touristed. This city is literally based on tourism. So everything gets a little bit more expensive. I have some recommendations for hostels and places to stay in Aguascalientes if you're trying to do this on a budget. My recommendation is stay the night in Aguascalientes, then get up the next morning really early. It's like 4 a.m. you'll have to get up, and then hike to the entrance of Machu Picchu, which is like up here-ish. It's not super far. I would say between an hour and 2 to 2.5 hours, depending on your fitness level for the hike. But you get up, you'll hike up there. Just make sure you get up to the top before the gates open. And if you're up there before the gates open, you'll get to go in first. Now, another side tip to this, make sure you go to the website, check the time spots if they're still doing that you can buy tickets for, and buy the earliest one. But you'll get in before all the buses get up there. And by far the majority of people who go up to Machu Picchu don't hike this last portion of it. They take the bus up, but buses don't go until they're full in the morning. So if you hike up and you get up there at 6 a.m., you'll be able to walk into Machu Picchu, and it'll just be you and Machu Picchu and maybe a couple other morning hikers, but it's so quiet and tranquilo, and you'll get to see Machu Picchu basically empty. I would say that piece of advice is true for any of the ways you're doing this. Stay the night in Aguascalientes, then get up early in the morning and get up there first thing and walk into the serene space alone. But yeah, that's number one. That's hiking to Machu Picchu. That's the 4 to 6 day, depending on how long you want to take to get up to Aguascalientes from Cusco, taking the Salkantay route. A couple other side notes to that is the Salkantay is free. You don't need to pay anybody. The Incan Trail, you have to pay somebody unless things changed really recent. But the Incan Trail, you have to pay to actually do the hike itself because they're trying to maintain it and it's so busy. And they're trying to keep guides on that trail. So you have to pay for a guide as well. Salkantay is not like that. You don't have to pay to hike it. You don't have to pay for a guide. You can go out there and hike it by yourself. Just understand if you do that, you are by yourself. So there are some risk factors and you want to be aware if you're going to go out there and hike in the Peruvian Andes by yourself. Speaking Spanish is a huge perk if you're going to try to do this by yourself. But you don't have to. You can also get a guide. Doing this trek is absolutely incredible with a guide as well. We kind of did half and half. We like walked into this group that was amazing. They were from Mexico, and we just kind of joined them for a day and a half. And the guide was amazing. He works for a company called Okidoki, which I'll put down in the description. I'll link it down there so you can check them out if you want to. All right, real quick before I tell you about the most scenic route up to Machu Picchu, which is the train to hike, I want to tell you about the map that I put together for Peru in specific. I'm trying to figure out where I want to go in Peru. Do I want to go to the rainforest? Cusco? Lima? I just don't know.
Hey, you know you don't need a crystal ball for that, right?
What do you mean?
Have you heard of Ryan's Travel Map?
Ryan's Travel, what?
Check it out.
Is that 100 places?
101 to be exact.
I never got that from my crystal ball. And there's recommendations on each place. This place is literally just a dropped pin.
Yeah, they're all over the place. Not just in one central location, they're all over Peru.
And this fits in my pocket?
Yeah, that crystal ball won't.
Doesn't fit in my pocket? You want to go?
Let's go.
All right. I'm taking this anyways. These travel maps that I've been putting together are like direct reviews of each small place that I've been. So I go into a hole in the wall and I take notes on that place and I put them directly in there. I find out where the Collectivos park and I put that in the map. I find this hostel over here that's cheap and has really good Wi-Fi, and I put in the notes how fast their Wi-Fi is. There's all sorts of different aspects of travel that I put into these travel maps, but it's all in one place and it's so easy to use, and you can use it right on your phone in Google Maps out of your pocket while you're walking around. And I think they're the best thing that I can give you besides physically traveling directly with you, which hopefully I'll also get to do at some point. All right, back to getting to Machu Picchu. Okay, now the second one is train to hike. Again, you'll start in Cusco down here, the main hub. You'll take either a bus if it's purchased with the tickets. Make sure you look at this. If it's purchased with the tickets, you'll take a bus to Poroy. If not, you'll have to take a taxi. It looks really close on this map, like you can walk it, but it's not. It's a little, it's several miles. I don't know what it is. It's 15 to 30 minutes if I remember correctly, but you have to take wheels to get there. So you'll get to Poroy, which is the main train station. Poroy, P-O-R-O-Y. Now you'll take that train all the way up. I believe this is the route. You come through here somewhere in these mountains and it's absolutely gorgeous. You'll pass through Ollantaytambo and you'll come all the way up to Aguascalientes. And again, you're at the base of Machu Picchu. You're not actually at Machu Picchu yet. So once you get there, you can either go straight up to Machu Picchu that same day, which if you only have one day, that's what I would recommend. Book an early train out of Poroy all the way up and then, go up to Machu Picchu and come back in the same day. But if you have time, I would again stay the night in Aguascalientes, get up early in the morning and then hike it. That's why this is the train to hike route. I would say get up early, get up there, be the first person basically into Machu Picchu. If you skipped from the last section, what I was saying is if you hike this last portion, it's about an hour to 2 hours from Aguascalientes up to the main entrance for Machu Picchu. And if you get up at like 4 a.m. and start hiking and you're at the entrance before they open, you'll be like the first person into Machu Picchu because the rest of the people will take the bus, and the buses don't leave until they're full in the morning. So once you get up there and walk in, it's literally you in Machu Picchu. It's so serene and surreal and gorgeous. It's well worth the early morning struggle and getting up and hiking to walk into Machu Picchu for sunrise alone. It's absolutely gorgeous. And honestly, that's kind of it, the train to hike. This is the big thing, getting from Cusco to Poroy. Know that you have to get wheels to get there, either a taxi, a Collectivo, or a bus that's bought with your train tickets. The train will take you all the way up. Absolutely phenomenal and gorgeous. It will take you to Aguascalientes, and then from Aguascalientes you hike in the morning. Now the third option is train to bus, which is literally the same. You take Cusco, Poroy, take the train all the way up, Aguascalientes, and then get on the bus. There are buses like right when you get off the train. This is one of the world wonders, right? So this is heavily touristed. You're not going to get lost on the train getting to Machu Picchu. Just follow the herd. You get off the trains in Aguascalientes, follow the herd straight to the buses, take the bus up, see Machu Picchu, bus back down, train all the way back to Cusco. And I would say this is the most popular way that people get up to Machu Picchu. And it's an easy day trip. Again, I would recommend doing it in 2, but that's up to your itinerary. Now the fourth one is Collectivo, the hike. It's the cheapest option and maybe the roughest, depending on how you like hiking or not. But what you're gonna do is in Cusco, there are gonna be collectivos. I don't know where they park in Cusco. A few of these blue locations on here are collectivo spots, and they take you to specific regions. I don't know where the ones are that take you all the way to Aguascalientes because I didn't take it. But you're gonna end up taking a collectivo all the way up. I would assume they like go, I don't even know, there's probably roads on here that aren't on the map, but they take you around in the mountains, and it's a several hours adventure. So you take the collectivo all the way up and around to Aguascalientes, which will be much cheaper than the train, but not nearly as good of a ride, I promise. You'll take the collectivo up to Aguascalientes. You'll get to Aguascalientes. You'll hike, do the morning thing, do the afternoon, whatever you want at this point. It's up to you. I've beaten that out, so you know that I think it's a 2-day thing, but whatever. You hike up there, you come back down, and you take the collectivo back down to Cusco. And I can't stress this enough. This will be the cheapest route, and it will be the bumpiest. Those collectivo rides whipping through the Andes Mountains, especially if you get motion sick, is a lot. And if you're gonna do that before you go see Machu Picchu, just be aware of what you're getting into. I'm not telling you not to do it, and if you're doing it on a full budget, that's probably the best way for you to go, but just know what you're getting yourself into. And that's it. That's a full traveling guide to getting to Machu Picchu. Down in the description, I'll load it with all sorts of resources, so go check that out. Again, I'm Ryan Fila. I hope your trip to Peru is amazing and you go out there and live your limit wherever you end up in the Andes Mountains. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.